Okay, I'm going to call the Planning and Zoning Board meeting to order. I'll ask for a roll call.
Rupert Russell.
Here.
Ramel Ford.
Present.
Debbie Rowell. Here. James Myers.
Here.
Megan Zahara.
Here.
Curtis Franklin. He's absent. And Chairperson Richard Kaysen.
Present. Okay, I'm going to move to new business. Before I do, I'm going to read the agenda item, but I'm also going to, after that, I'll have some comments on the way that we're going to try to conduct the meeting tonight. Right after that, we're going to have some introductions because we have some new folks with us that hasn't worked with our board members before, and we're going to have a brief introduction there. Later, they will have staff comments, and then we'll have discussions. I'm sure the applicant will be speaking, and but now I'm going to read the development agreement before I make the other comments. New business. A development agreement, Stonebridge Project, Fort Meade Data Center. The applicant, Fort Meade LLC, requests approval of a development agreement with the City of Fort Meade pursuant to Sections 163.3220-163.3243 Florida statutes. The Planning and Zoning Board, acting as the local planning agency, is required to conduct a public hearing and provide a recommendation to the City Commission. Now, later in this public hearing, we're going to invite the public, and I think some of you have signed up to come up and speak. We'll need you to give your name and address for the record. We're going to have to limit you to 3 minutes. And please keep in mind that the subject for this evening is about a development agreement. This board does not make the decision on whether or not Fort Meade will ultimately get a data center. We don't do that. The City Commission will do that. We're here tonight to review this development agreement and try to ensure that we get a fair and equitable agreement for the city and everybody involved. And then we're going to be charged with recommending approval or denial. So with that said, I'm going to go to the staff first for some introductions to the members who have not worked with our attorney. And Mr. Bell's been with us, but I don't know, you're relatively new with us as well.
Yes, sir.
So would you go ahead, Zach?
Absolutely. Good evening. My name's Zachary Good with TG Law. We are serving as your interim city attorneys. Pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I'm also joined by my colleague Jennifer Cockcroft, also with TG Law. I'm one of our primary attorneys for planning and zoning. So as we move forward in these next few months, you'll be seeing a lot of me as we go through these meetings. And once Mr. Bell does his introduction, I'll have some statements to read regarding the conduct of quasi-judicial hearings.
Mr. Bell?
Sure. So, Troy Bell, new city manager, effectively, I guess, January 1. So, a few months in the position. Had a chance to say hello to the Planning and Zoning Board before. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. But now in the role, operating as such. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Turn it over to staff comments.
Thank you, sir. So this is a quasi-judicial hearing, so please be advised that the following items on the agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. An opportunity for persons to speak on each item will be made available after the applicant and staff have made their presentations on each item. All testimony, including public testimony and evidence, will be made under oath or affirmation. Additionally, each person who gives testimony may be subject to cross-examination. If you do not wish to be either cross-examined or sworn, your testimony will be given its due weight. The general public will not be permitted to cross-examine witnesses, but the public may request the board to ask questions on their behalf. The full agenda packet on each item is hereby entered into the record. Persons representing organizations must present evidence of their authority to speak for those organizations. At this time, board members must disclose any ex parte communications concerning items on the agenda. That is, any communications that you all had that are outside of this public hearing regarding this item, aside from communications that you've had with staff or attorneys. So, Mr. Chair, if you at this time, I'd ask for each member to make their disclosure, if any.
Well, I spoke with you and Gemma last week. Once we received the development agreement package and we had questions, and to get familiar with it, we had conversations.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no conversation.
Yeah, conversations.
I've had none.
I've had one conversation with your office in regards to questions about the development agreement.
Thank you. So at this time, I will swear in any person who wishes to testify on these quasi-judicial items. So at this time, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you hereby swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? You may be seated. So at this time, we'll move into the staff report. So as the city attorney, we have worked with the developer to draft an agreement. I'll give you all an overview of why this is before you. And then certainly if you all have questions for either myself or Mr. Bell, we'll answer those, followed by the applicant will have their presentation. So the applicant, Fort Meade LLC, is requesting approval of a development agreement with the city of Fort Meade pursuant to sections 163 spot 3220 through 163 spot 3243 Florida statutes. The Planning and Zoning Board, acting as the local planning agency, is required to conduct a public hearing and provide a recommendation of either approval or denial to the City Commission. The subject property has been the subject of prior legislative approvals by the City of Fort Meade, establishing entitlement framework for the proposed development. The City Commission of Fort Meade previously adopted ordinance number 2025-08, which amended the future land use map to designate the subject property as industrial. In adopting that ordinance, the City Commission made legislative findings that the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan, complies with Chapter 163 Florida statutes, and promotes the appropriate use of land and infrastructure in furtherance of the public interest. Next, Fort Meade City Commission adopted ordinance number 2025-09, rezoning the subject property to Industrial Planned Unit Development, IPUD, and approving a master development plan for a data center development of up to approximately 4,400,000 square feet. The PUD approval established binding development standards and conditions, including requirements for infrastructure coordination, mandatory connection to city potable water and wastewater systems, phasing tied to infrastructure availability, and a requirement that the applicant enter into a development agreement to address utility extensions and infrastructure improvements. Those approvals are previously approved and not subject to approval on tonight's agenda. Accordingly, the proposed development agreement is not a request for new development entitlements. It is an agreement dealing with the infrastructure matters as previously required. So the legal standard for approval of development agreements is set forth in sections 163.3220 through 163.3243 Florida statutes. A local government may enter into a development agreement only after 2 public hearings, one of which may be held by the local planning agency. Your local code has adopted that one of the hearings shall be held by the local planning agency, the Planning and Zoning Board, which is why this is here before you tonight. The proposed development agreement before you is authorized pursuant to these statutes and section 6.02.00 and following of the City of Fort Meade Land Development Code. The agreement must be supported by competent substantial evidence and demonstrate consistency with the comprehensive plan and applicable land development regulations. Staff has found that the agreement is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the city code and is specifically consistent with and implements the prior legislative approvals applicable to the property. Again, the agreement does not modify or increase the density or intensity of the development previously approved, but instead establishes framework for infrastructure delivery, concurrency compliance, and long-term development investing. So as a brief kind of synopsis, essentially what this agreement does is reserves capacity for water and wastewater for this specific project. It provides for a prepayment, prepayment by the developer of $10 million delivered in 2 tranches to help fund city infrastructure and related improvements that are necessary due to the impact of this development, and provides for a repayment of that over a number of years as a tax credit. So once the project is on the tax rolls, they will be eligible for an annual rebate up to 40% of the assessment for that year until that $10 million is repaid. However, this is not a loan. There is no obligation for repayment if, for whatever reason, there is not tax revenue. Okay, so if at some time in the future, the state legislature decides that this type of development is tax exempt, like a church, we would not be required to, come up with $10 million out of city funds. The other major portion of this agreement, as far as the development approvals, is it memorializes impact fees. So it vests this development with the current impact fee schedule and memorializes the statutory process for impact fee credits, so that the developer in the construction of eligible improvements that under state statute would entitle them to a credit towards their impact fees, that they would be able to utilize that statutory process. And with that, I will just remind you all that the recommendation for tonight is that the Planning and Zoning Board, sitting as the local planning agency, review the development agreement and transmit a recommendation of either approval or denial of the development agreement to the City Commission, and also publicly announce that the next hearing before the City Commission will be held on April 14th, 2026. So with that, if you all have any questions for either myself or Mr. Bell, we'll be happy to do that at this time.
If I may add, in addition to the 10 million, there is 300,000 towards the cost of water rights, increased water rights. It's effectively 10.3.
What is the, I don't know that I clearly understand the purpose of the impact fee credits. Where's the give and take on that? Where's the benefit to the city of Fort Meade?
So pursuant to state statute, a developer that constructs infrastructure is entitled to receive a credit for the value of their work against any impact fees charged for that same type of infrastructure by a local government. So if any other developer that comes in and builds, say, roads, would be eligible to receive a credit for the value of that infrastructure against any impact fees that they are charged by the city for that same type of infrastructure. So this is just a memorialization of a statutory process and a vesting of the impact fee schedule as it stands now, as opposed to the developer having uncertainty in the future as to what the development, what the impact fee schedule might be if there are changes in the future.
So that's not influenced by the fact that the city's going to take ownership of some of those improvements after the development's completed. That's not part of that trade-off or anything.
No, it's simply a statutory process. If Mr. Bell, if you have anything additional to add.
You're absolutely right. So after it's complete, the city would take ownership of it.
Right.
And
I understood.
right.
And then we would have the maintenance of it, but we would reap benefits. And what kind of benefits are we going to reap by taking ownership? is that gonna be predicated on, gallons of water, or what's the economic benefit for me gonna be on taking ownership of those?
So, in general, having ownership of infrastructure means that you have control, but you also have responsibility for maintenance. Any development that occurs between here and there along the lines, now we have resources available for any additional development that may occur.
Even though that's gonna be on private property.
Well, we're talking about the portion that is on public property. Would from here to there, we would have the opportunity to then utilize that to provide services to any other development in that area.
Future development.
Yes, sir.
To the west, because it'd be limited, correct?
That's correct. Today, no, we never know what it might look like in the future.
I understand that.
Right.
Um,
I had a question on the water rights. You talk about the $300,000 cap to the developer. What costs are there? What are possibly there for the city on top of that 300,000? And if this is due to their use of the resources, then I don't understand why the city of Fort Meade would be responsible for that additional cost.
Very good question. So as it stands now, we are at 79% of our permitted usage for water. So we can supply the 50,000 gallons that is within this development agreement without exceeding our cap for permit. So if we were to add that 50,000 gallons in addition to the other development that is underway now, that would take us to 88% of our permitted value. So in order to service this development, it would not require us to go out for any additional water permitted pumping capacity. So in effect, we could supply them and it would not affect our permit at all. However, we understand that in the future, if we wanted to bring additional development to the community, that there would be, depending on the size of that development, a need to exceed what our current permit is. And as such, we would probably want to consider becoming a member, a full member. We're currently a member, but we're not a full voting member, participating member of the Regional Water Council. And there's a cost associated with becoming a member. That cost is somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000. So in order to address that cost, that's where we came up with a number, pretty much split the baby, $300,000. That would be our cost associated with joining the full participation in the Regional Water Council. That would allow for us to be able to engage in future development. And so in consideration of the fact that this is a significant portion of our existing permitted capacity, we were able to negotiate this amount towards future usage. Now, I mentioned the cost associated with joining the Regional Water Council. Now, there are other options that may be available to us that don't involve joining the Regional Council that may be more economically advantageous to the city. And so we could use that $300,000 towards that as well. So we have the flexibility based on what makes the best sense for the city. Now, long-term membership in the Regional Council is going to take long-term costs. It's going to include long-term costs. And so any additional development would share in, as a result of the impact fees, that additional cost of being a member. Okay, you're welcome.
Is that $300,000, $250,000, is that an annual fee?
No, that is the cost of becoming a member.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
After you become a member, are there
Yes.
additional fees in the future?
Yes, absolutely. There is a cost associated with being a full participating member of the Regional Council. And it looks as though we could become a member with an additional it would provide to us access to additional 500,000 gallons per day permitted capacity if we did.
Okay, would that be the same participation with this $300,000 fee where we're reimbursed for the $300,000 in the future? Or, I'm not sure I understand future costs of being a member of that would be directly paid by the city.
So the future cost, I mean, the reoccurring costs would be costs that are incurred by the city on a reoccurring basis.
Totally.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Do those exponentially grow percentage wise as the years go on?
It can grow because the costs that are shared by all participating members is the cost that the council assesses based on the cost of developing access to water in the aquifer. And so as those costs may go up, the annual costs that are shared across, right now I believe there's 13 members that are shared across the members, can go up. But by the same token, it could go down. Do I expect it would go down? No, I don't. But it is a shared cost across all the members of the organization based on the number of thousands of gallons of capacity you're permitted to use.
So you see it as a feasible cost,
Yes.
a benefit. It's not a debt we would have.
No. I see it as a necessary aspect of the development of Fort Meade in the future that we're going to have to face regardless of whether the data center comes or not. We are going to grow, and we are nearing the capacity. It's a benefit for us at this time that they're proposing to come here because of the ability to use that $300,000 towards something that we're going to probably have to expend anyway in order to grow.
Okay.
So it allows us to offset the cost of becoming a member up front, but ultimately the reoccurring costs are costs that are going to be borne by the additional development and the capacity of the city as a whole.
Okay.
Can our infrastructure handle that much more water?
So again, a very good question. So if you look at the projects that are proposed as a result or optional for the $10 million that has been negotiated as part of the agreement, one of the projects that is there is water and sewer improvement. Now, mind you, water and sewer needs to be improved anyway. Okay, so the improvements that we anticipate that we need to make anyway are available to be offset. And obviously, the commission has to make that decision ultimately, but the availability of those funds would go towards being able to improve our current pumping capacity and infrastructure, and also our future pumping capacity and infrastructure.
Now, part of the development agreement is that they're going to help with the infrastructure for the water, waste and water plant, correct? Does that come out of the $10 million that they proposed giving to us, or is that something that they're going to do separately?
So the infrastructure that they're going to have to develop between our current facilities and their facilities are all part of the impact fees that are available for the credit. Now, the ultimate capacity that we talked about is one of the projects that is listed as a potential option for that $10 million. There's also the fire station. There's a number of other projects. I won't go down the list, but that is one of the projects. And the commission ultimately would have to determine what the priorities are, where they would want to allocate those funds as a priority versus something else in that list. So, thank you.
Don't really know what, back to the impact fee credits, we don't really know what kind of figures we're talking about. The only figures I really see in this agreement, I know that's hard to project, I'm sure, but is that the $10 million loan or gift or whatever, and then the 40% tax rate on ad valorem, which we never know how much that's going to generate by the time the I mean, I've heard projections, but ad valorem is, the county's going to have their millage rate and they're going to get their cut, the school boards. But
Actually,
the city will set a millage rate based on the full assessed value to get their portion of taxes on that property out there. Is that correct?
no, it's my understanding that the millage rate is set across all properties in the city, and it's a standard rate for all properties. So
Okay.
it would not be differentiated for that facility. Now, your statement about the county getting their cut. The county has already issued I believe it was $120 million credit towards this development, and I don't believe that they begin to reap taxes again in the first 7 years. Maybe it's 5 years or 7 years. Don't quote me on that, but it's not day one.
Is that in the development agreement?
No, it's not, because that's with the county. But your question about the county getting their cut of that 40%, that's not going to happen, at least in the first 5 to 7 years.
Well, no, that's not even the way I understood it.
Mhm.
The way I understood it is it was going to be 100% taxes, and I'm sure the county would get their ad valorem times their millage rate. 100% of those, the city of Fort Meade is going to get 60% and give back 40%
Of
of the Fort Meade's tax rate.
No, not of the Fort.
Yeah, so sorry if I can
Yeah,
jump
I
in.
need to clarify.
Yeah, so annually the city sets a millage rate as part of its adoption of its budget. Right, that's how
Correct.
every property in the city is taxed. And if we say the property tax rate is, pick a number, 5 mils,
Yeah.
then the data center property will similarly be taxed at 5 mils. If the tax revenue at 5 mils is $1 million,
Okay.
then the city receives $1 million. The developer then
Gets back.
has to apply for their credit on an annual basis and says, please give me 40% of $1 million, $400,000. And then the city would provide them back that credit, that tax rebate on an annual basis until the $10 million is repaid.
Right, but my point was we really don't know what kind of figure that's going to be. I mean, not that it
Yeah,
matters.
I think
it's what it
that's,
is. Ad valorem tax is what it is. I understand that.
Mhm.
But we don't have now. Does that include? Will that include any tangible personal property, which would be inside the building?
Yes, it does.
And we can have a millage rate, and we can tax ad valorem against that as well. Can Fort Meade, or does that all go to the county? On tangible.
You want me to address it? Okay, good. Yeah, no, that doesn't all go to the county.
Okay.
That a portion of that comes to the city,
Okay.
and a portion of that, based on the scenario that he just mentioned, would go back to repay for the additional $10 million until that is paid off.
Same at 40% applied to that.
Yes, sir.
Well, because that tangible can be up front, lots of money. And computers, expensive computer, and machinery and equipment and all the things that are considered tangible and are assessed for ad valorem.
Yes.
I just always wondered if the city got a levy against that. So
Yes.
that's good. Okay, thank you.
You're
What-
welcome.
What about the fire assessment? Doesn't that alter as well, depending on the square footage of the building?
Yes, it does.
And the fire assessment as a non-ad valorem would not be subject to the same credit.
Correct. So, and that would go directly to the fire department.
Yes. And this is, mind you, 40% of additional revenue on something that we are receiving virtually nothing at this point.
Okay.
So we would receive 60% and 40%. We would receive 100%. They would apply for it, and then 40% would be to pay back the portion of the $10 million. But
until the advanced money is paid off.
That's correct.
Now,
Is
brings
there
me
a
to-
time that they have to apply for it? Like, is there a certain time period where they have to apply for this to be reimbursed?
No, I don't believe that there's a time limitation. However, whatever is credited back would go towards that. And so whatever portion of time it takes at 40% in order to equal $10 million, which based on the projections that I have, which are based on the projections of revenue that the development of that property represents, would take anywhere from 2 to 3 years for them to pay back, based on the projections.
Well, under the tax credits in the development agreement on page 7, my page 7, grant of tax credits, the last line in there says upon payment of the developer funding advance, developer's right to the tax credits is unconditional and cannot be revoked or retracted by the city. What does that mean?
So that means that once the city has received that funding advance, that $10 million, the developer is entitled to these tax credits until such time as they expire, right? Until such time as that $10 million is paid back.
And then it stops.
And then it stops.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that was wasn't clear to me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Very good question. Again.
I'll go ahead with a couple other things in here that I want to. Y'all feel free to ask your questions.
You asking all the good questions.
And I love the questions about the 10 million because initially the development agreement did not include any advance at all. And so this was through, and the developer can talk more to this, I would expect in their presentation, but it was a hard negotiation back and forth to advance those funds in the beginning as opposed to waiting till 2029, the projected start date of the first building, in order for us to see those tax revenue benefits. So.
Does the city have anything in place for when this money does come in, that it is used appropriately?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we felt it was important to list the items there. So what I anticipate, assuming that I am here at that time, would be that those funds would go into a separate account and a separate fund. So it wouldn't be commingled. Not it. All right. So that those funds would be clearly utilized for the items that are listed.
And where can we find the items that are listed?
That is under City Works, which is on page 3. I believe it's the third whereas clause.
Yes, whereas the city desires to improve other infrastructure or facilities related to water, wastewater, and emergency services within the service area, and other property within the city's jurisdictional boundaries, which may include without limitation, fire station construction, city library improvements, implementing and or upgrading citizen communications and asset management systems, increasing the city's future potable and non-potable water supplies, vertipad, vertiport aeronautical facilities, and undertaking strategic planning and other planning work, including the possibility of hiring city staff or consultants as needed in connection with the foregoing.
Just to confirm.
That, by the way, is AI. Right.
On page 9 in G, where they talk about the water and wastewater easements, construction easements, are these temporary easements or are they perpetual easements? And what's the purpose of it? Why would the city grant to the developer easements over city-owned property?
Yeah, so the intent of these as being for construction purposes would mean that they would be, temporary. And this is customary in large developments where you have to cross over city property or connect to city infrastructure that may be within the public rights of way.
Right, and one thing I may, suggest, I don't know the durations and the commitments and everything as well as you guys do, but I believe it needs to say temporary construction easement. Then I don't know if there's a date of expiration, because if these things are open ended, that causes serious cloud of title potentially if the city were to sell a piece of property and they're tangled up with these things. So with option of renewal or something, I don't know where that may need to go, but I do think the word temporary construction easement is important.
But I just want to make sure, I did read that upon the completion of a building on that property, then they would in return quit claim deed it back to the city if they were to assume any property. Is that correct?
It would be conveyed.
Yes,
Conveyed
yes,
back
it
to
would
the
be conveyed,
property?
correct.
Okay.
I think the intent by using the term construction was to suggest that it is temporary only during construction. So once construction is completed, then it would no longer apply. But I think your point about temporary, at least to make sure that it's clear and called out, may be pertinent.
Yeah, maybe some language to the end of construction
Okay.
or something. I don't know. But
What kind of impact will this have on the community of them redoing some of our wastewater infrastructure?
Well, as I alluded before, that, and I noted that, I think in my first meeting in the report that I provided to the commission, that our wastewater and water facilities and infrastructure are in severely poor condition. And so utilizing the opportunity that this presents in order to improve those infrastructure and facilities is paramount and critical to the existence and growth of this community, in my opinion. Having been a water and sewer engineer in the start of my career. So I'm a little partial and biased.
one of the questions I have too, there's a lot about the water and things like that. I wanted to address like priority. Is the priority? I don't know if water runs low or whatever goes on or can happen. Is the citizens of Fort Meade the priority, or our commitment as part of this agreement is the data center the priority? Because certainly, being a citizen, I like water. I want to make sure that the citizens are not cut off to run the data center. And I didn't see anything like that in here. And I didn't see anything to do to power. And I know there's phases of the power, and then they're going to be under their own power, is what I remember. But what about power, for the community?
Okay. So I'll take the second part of that question first. So the community is currently served, at least the greater portion of the community is currently served by our own utility, which is provided by our membership in the FMPA. And the power that is slated to be used by this development would be provided by Duke. So this would not be on our system at all. So effectively, the developer is negotiating between the developer and Duke. And so to the extent that the whole state of Florida has to deal with power deviations and fluctuations, yes, that's an issue that affects us. But specifically, the city of Fort Meade and the provision of power in the city of Fort Meade is a separate issue from the provision of power through Duke to the data center.
And is that forever?
Unless the commission in the future negotiates a deal with Duke as opposed to FMPA. I don't personally see that happening because I think the agreement that we currently have with FMPA I believe it's a 30-year agreement, so we're talking about 30 years in the future. And at that point, who knows what, God willing, I'm still here.
But we'll never be supplying any power to the data center from the city of Fort Meade.
From the city of Fort, it's highly unlikely that we would ever provide that. And the reason why I say that it's
Sorry, and if I just may,
Sure.
the service territories for electric utilities are highly regulated in the state of Florida. It
Mhm.
would require an amendment to the service territory of both
Mhm.
Duke and the city's electric utility in order to change that. That's frankly not something that we can postulate on tonight. And I do want to remind the board that the applicant is here and has a presentation. So some of these questions about where they're getting their power, et cetera, may be better directed to the applicant and better answered by their representatives.
But I do want to finish that answer. So the reason why I say it's highly unlikely is because FMPA does not have the capacity to supply the data center. So I'm not going to say impossible because we live in a world where anything can be possible, but they don't have the capacity, and the agreement exists that it would have to go through severe regulatory changes in order for that to happen. So it's not likely ever going to happen. Oh, yes. What was the first part of that? A question.
The impact on citizens being, will the city give priority to the data
Okay.
center versus the city center? No problem.
So there is a provision in the document that talks about if the state of Florida enters in, I'll allow the attorney to speak to that provision specifically. If you're ready to, and then
Yeah,
I'll
it's,
follow up with that.
Pulling it up.
Mhm.
All right. Here we go. So as we talk about the reserved capacity, in the section on reserved capacity, the city hereby represents and warrants that as of the date of this agreement, the city has adequate capacity available at the city's existing water and wastewater treatment facilities to, 1, accommodate the water demand of up to 50,000 GPD of potable water service at full build-out, and 2, accept the sewer demand of up to 50,000 GPD of sanitary sewer service at full build-out, the reserved capacity. The city hereby expressly reserves and covenants that it will reserve the reserved capacity to meet the water demand and sewer demand for the developer for the term of this agreement. The city's reservation of the reserved capacity is contingent upon the developer's completion of the project within 20 years of the effective date. If not completed with 20 years from the effective date, the city may release the reserved capacity for any portion of the project not completed after 30 days written notice by certified mail and email to the developer. So that is that's what we are currently representing and covenanting to. And then as we talk about, as we move down in this section, there's no vested rights to any additional water supply. So except with respect to the reserved capacity, nothing in this agreement shall be construed as granting the developer a vested right to any additional quantity of water or wastewater beyond the reserved capacity. So
that tells me they're first.
No, I would not say that. Because right now, there's a provision in here that talks about if the state determines that there's a reduction in water usage, then that releases us from that commitment over that 50,000. We currently have policies in place that if there is a reduction in our pumping capacity, that we supply the residents as well as the businesses, but not one in front of the other or the vice versa.
But I don't see that in here.
And because that's an existing city policy that they would have to follow.
I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. I think there needs to be language to cover what we're talking about, because I don't read it, this is an agreement, a binding agreement.
But
I think we need to cover the city better and whether we're quoting some other,
And
whatever this policy is, because,
I understand your concerns. I would suggest that if we move in that direction, that is something that we apply to all businesses, and it should be uniform across the entire city. We shouldn't hold one,
no, I agree with that.
yeah.
I would agree with
and that would be my own.
All the businesses ain't in this agreement.
That's
This is
true.
the agreement we're entering right now.
And so,
So I think we address it here now, and then however you wanna deal with the other, we'll deal with that, but.
Yeah, and I will also add that the city does expressly reserve its general governmental authority and police powers in this agreement. So we have reserved our right to enforce our laws and ordinances and our other regulatory commitments. So to Mr. Bell's point, as all customers are treated equally, that is the policy that is specifically reserved in this agreement.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because there is parts of this I don't understand. You know, so
So who has the meter? Who running the meter for the amount of water they're getting each day?
it would be part of their water usage would be metered just like we meter any other industrial or commercial property. So it would be the water facility that meters that.
I do have a question about the water.
Yes, ma'am.
Recently, we've had several full water notices, citywide and also for certain areas of our city.
Yes.
The money that we're getting up front, you said that our water and wastewater needs significant improvements.
Mhm.
Will that money be used towards the problems that we had from electronic problems that just caused our most recent boil water? Will those be improved with that before the data center comes online?
So it would be my recommendation as the manager and administration of city resources that we apply all resources to making sure that we don't have those issues. We have a $100+ million grant that we're working on to address some of that. We just received in the last legislative session, hasn't been signed yet, a $2 million grant for the improvement of our wastewater facilities. So all of that is moving towards addressing some of the inadequacies that I have identified in the system. So beyond that, with the 10 million that are there, I'm recommending by including that in this, that the City Commission give me the authority to move forward with applying those funds to addressing those issues.
Would those improvements be able to be done before they need their water supply? Before
I believe that the timeline would definitely be before the 2029, which is when they anticipate that they would be ready. So if I have anything to do with it, it would be a year, no more than a year and a half.
Thank you.
When you talk about a full build out, and they might present this in their presentation, how long is that going to take?
Based on my understanding of the project and the developer allow him to go into more detail about this, the first building is anticipated to come online in 2029, and then a building every year after that. So that would be based on 8 buildings. 2037 would be then full stabilization or full build out, if I'm not mistaken.
So the first part of the 10 million comes within the first 90 days
Of them breaking ground. And I think there's specific language that identifies exactly what that start date is.
and the second portion of that would come when?
Within 12 months, and there's a provision that allows it to come within 6 months of the first. If the city applies for it and can show proof of the use of the first tranche of the 5 million.
So are we using a closed system? We flushing? How often are we flushing our system, our loop system?
So with our existing treatment process, we are not using a closed system. So we're pumping, we're producing, we're distributing. It comes back to us. We treat it and then we dispose of it. So part of the improvements that we're anticipating and I'm recommending and working with our water and sewer director is to create a reclamation cycle, which would allow us to treat the effluent to a higher level and then be able to reuse that because it is treated to a higher level in irrigation and sprinkler systems and that. So it's not just disposed of, but it actually has a valuable use.
Okay.
I believe we wanted to hear from the applicant now, if the applicant would like to come up, speak with us. Just give us your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Sure. Doug Furstenberg, 5403 Bradley Boulevard, Bethesda, Maryland. I'm a principal of Stonebridge, who are the developers of the project. So thank you all for having me tonight, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a big moment. There's a lot of passion about the project. We understand how people feel. We've been doing this for 4 decades, so we understand that people have lots of concerns. We want to make sure we've addressed their questions. Before I get into our presentation tonight, which is about the development agreement, I thought I'd just touch on a couple of things. The plan y'all approved a little over a year ago has led to discussions about 4 key issues that we hear a lot about. The first is noise. So one thing in your plan that you approved is we have no building closer than a half mile to our property line. If you look at noise studies, anything we do that's associated with the data center, the noisiest being our generators, which run about an hour a month and limited to 100 hours a year. That's the noisiest piece of equipment we have. Okay. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. No one usually accuses me of not being able to be heard. If you go a half a mile, that decibel level will get down to about 50 to 52 decibels. That's quieter than the wah-wah that operates. It's quieter than the highway that we're listening going by. So the noise is going to abate because of the plan you approved and where we're placing the buildings and the equipment. Second thing is about traffic. So traffic long-term compared to an industrial use is extraordinarily low. We don't have trucks coming in and out of the day with the industrial designation that would be servicing a warehouse or a distribution center. We will have a lot of traffic during the 5 or 6 years of construction. What we are going to do is we're going to have a traffic mitigation plan. And let me tell you, having done traffic mitigation plans for 3 decades, they're a little different today than they were before because you'd have a flagman trying to keep an eye of trucks. Well, we have very different technology today. So we are going to be able to track. If the trucks are told to come around town, which is what we're planning to do from various different directions, we're going to know if they did that. And if they went through town, they will get increasing fines. So we will be able to monitor and strictly enforce. It will be in our construction agreement with our contractor. And therefore, everybody who's doing work at the project is going to be responsible for following that. So in terms of mitigating the traffic during construction when it will be at its peak, we'll be able to take care of that. Power, you just had a bit of a conversation. You know, the city is predominantly served by FMPA through the city's muni power. Our power is going to be coming from Duke Energy. They control our territory. The city will be getting municipal taxes and franchise fees from that power. Those fees will be somewhere between 2 and 3 times the current gross revenue of the city's power company. So from an isolation of the city of Fort Meade's power, it's transformative in a positive way because of where you're getting your power comes from FMPA. We're not getting power from FMPA, and we're getting our power from Duke. On the water, the plan y'all approved initially had 140,000 gallons a day of capacity. In working with the city and getting new information from the new leadership, we realized that that was a number that was a significant issue for the city. I think, Mr. City Manager, it would probably take all of your available capacity. So we reevaluated our plans, and we've committed to basically 50,000 gallons a day, which is what we need to meet the potable water needs, bathrooms, kitchens, for the buildings. All of the mechanical equipment, therefore, will have to be served by what's called a closed loop system, because we will not have any water to serve that. So a closed loop system is you fill it up and then it's closed. It self-circulates and it doesn't evaporate. So in terms of water, we are already at a very low level at the 140,000 gallons a day that was in the PUD. We've dropped it to 50,000 gallons a day, and it will not be servicing the operations of the data centers. It will be meeting the needs of the people who work at the data center. So that's kind of the key elements that we've heard many times about citizens' concerns, and I think we have a plan to address those. In terms of that, I'm happy at the end of the presentation to answer any questions, but I thought just in terms of what we've heard in meetings and town halls, and when you use your AI and you search what's the problem with a data center, those are the things that come up a lot. I'm going to transition now to the development agreement itself, which is before you tonight, and Elise and I will walk you through that. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So just, quick reminder of the project. It's been said, but, it's a 1,300 acre project. It was approved for 4.4 million square feet. That's a 7.6 FAR, the lowest FAR we've ever developed that. But when you develop 1,300 acres, your FAR can be awfully low. The PUD was approved by the City Commission in June of 25. And we're targeting our first building. We're hopefully going to beat 29, but we're targeting in 28. And what's relevant there, as it relates to the development agreement, the way it works in Florida, the January 1st after the completion of the building is when the building will go on the property tax rolls. So if we finish in 28, the first building revenues will come in. The increased land value will come in over time as they reassess that. So that'll be a source of revenue. Go to the next slide, please. So I'm sure you have perfect memories. This is the site plan that was associated with the PUD. And just to reinforce in terms of the distance from the property lines, because that's an important buffer for sight lines, noise, things of that nature. And as you can see, people were talking about it, that we should have put different one. We're bringing that road all the way down to Broadway, which is where we're bringing the utilities up. So in terms of the amount of area that will be on the temporary construction easements, it's gone way down from some of the original plans, which were coming in off of the highway. We're now coming in off of Broadway. So a lot smaller area where we'll actually have temporary construction easements. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to turn this over to Lise because she's going to get real technical, and you're better off having the lawyer explain that to you than me. Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa. It's been a very long time since I've been before this board, over a decade actually, since I've been appearing before the planning board in Fort Meade. I was brought on to specifically negotiate and help this developer with the development agreement. I have been practicing for almost 30 years and have worked on dozens and dozens of development agreements across the state of Florida, just like this one. And before I start diving into the technical details, I have to give a little bit of props to your city manager, because every time we would have a phone conversation, Doug would say, "Elise, don't kill me, but," and he would say something else that he agreed to and something else. So when you talk about a fair and equitable agreement, this is more than a fair and equitable agreement from what I've seen in 20 years. What's put into this agreement is a pot of money that allows the city to go and fix a lot of the problems that the city has. I mean, the developer, there was no money to begin with. And I really do think that if you step back and look at it, we talk a lot about the minutia, and we can dive into that. But if you think about the big picture, this is such a win-win for the community. And it gives the city the ability to take this money and do so many good things with it. And I want to talk a little bit more now about technical. So we are at the development agreement stage. If this development agreement is approved, we'll move forward to permitting. There's a lot of steps, as you know, in development and permitting. We have to go through the city, all kinds of state agencies, the Water Management District. There's multiple permits. We'll go through that stage and then ultimately to that hopefully 2028 or 2029 construction. Next slide, please. So really, I think you hit on this a little bit, Mr. Chair. In its basic terms, a development agreement is a contract between the city and the developer, and it outlines specifically what the city is going to do and what the developer is going to do. It is required by the PUD, but the only real thing that's required by the PUD is for the developer to say, how are we going to build this water and wastewater infrastructure? But as you can see from looking and reviewing the development agreement, this has really turned into a development agreement that provides a lot of additional incentives and benefits to the city. As the city attorney already said, this is governed by Chapter 163. Obviously, this is the first of 2 public hearings, and it requires a term under the statutes of less than 30 years. This is a 20-year term. We already talked about the fact that this development agreement is a very finite thing that is before you today. So you may hear things about the development itself and the PUD. That is already approved. And so hopefully as you look at this today, you're really looking at this confined box that's this agreement, this very well negotiated agreement between your city manager and our developer that's before you today. Next slide, please. So let's dive in a little bit to the actual key obligations of the city. There are 2 real key obligations of the city. Number 1, reserving that 50,000 gallons a day. I mean, that is key and critical for the developer so that they know that they can service the people within that building when it's up and operational. The developer still, remember, has to pay for that water and wastewater capacity. You are just reserving it and saying you're going to keep it for the developer during the term of this agreement. And even with this reservation, I think that you heard that there's additional capacity available today, and we are hoping that you will use some of those funds to go out and find other water resources for the city to really do long-term planning. Like, how do you, I'm not going to steal your thunder, Doug. I'm not going to go into all of those things because Doug wants to talk about those. And then the tax credits. I want to talk a little bit first before I dive into the specifics of the tax credits about the developer obligations, because I think this will be helpful. But at its root, when and if the project is built, it goes on the ad valorem tax rolls, and then 40% of the ad valorem only taxes would be abated. We'd have to apply for it, so if we don't do that properly, we don't get it, but would be abated for as many years as it takes for that $10 million to be repaid. If anything happens and this is not built, it is not constructed, it is not completed, that means it never goes on the tax rolls. There is zero obligation for the city to have to repay anything. So this is, if we're up and we're running and you're getting a lot of tax revenue, then you have something to abate. I think that the city attorney, referred to what happens if there's no ad valorem taxes. Everybody would love that, right? The developer would love that. You're not going to be getting tax revenue, but you wouldn't have to pay us. So that's a big if down the road. So let's talk about the $300,000. That is for the city, obviously, to work with the regional water conglomerate. Troy recently, just as 3 or 4 days ago, was like, listen, we may want to use it for something else water related. We're fine with that. We want you to be able to use that money to go out and secure whatever water rights and additional water resources you can. Second developer obligation, to design, install, and construct this public water and wastewater facilities at our own sole cost and expense. So you talked a little bit about the temporary access easement, the construction easement. Because we're going to be building some of those facilities on city property, you would give us a temporary construction easement, obviously, to go on and build those within the city's property. We can absolutely work with the city attorney, and at whatever time we're negotiating those agreements, we can make sure that that automatically terminates at whatever time the construction is over, and we convey that or provide a bill of sale as applicable. We'll make sure that language is in the agreement. We also have to design, install, and construct public roadways at the developer's sole cost and expense. Again, providing and building this infrastructure that's then conveyed over to the city is, developers do things a lot more efficiently than local governments. So this allows us to provide those to you to do it at our own cost and expense. And then finally, the big bucket of money that we call the developer funding advance. This is a pot of money that we are going to provide to the city. The very first payment is due the very second we put a shovel in the ground. So again, negotiated very hard by your city manager, but the second we get that first horizontal permit to go out and start doing work and putting shovels in the ground, you get $5 million available. And I think the second comes about a year later, if not sooner. So with that, I do want to turn it back over to Doug so you can talk about that developer funding advance and all the things that the city can use that for.
So before I get to that, I just want to emphasize a couple of things. One is, as Elise was saying, the city's putting out no capital, which is perfectly fine. We're not asking the city to fund any infrastructure. We're going to fund the infrastructure. That seems to be the best way for all of us to do it. On the question about water, our expectation in terms of if there's a water issue, in terms of availability, that we be treated equitably. Our interpretation of the document is that's what it says, but I just wanted to, I know that was a large question earlier. We should be treated like everybody else. If we have to reduce our water usage because of an issue at the time, we're treated equitably, we will reduce our water usage at the time. So I just wanted that to be clear. One other thing in the agreement, because this is not a small project, we are paying for you to hire your own third-party reviews. And one of the things in this development agreement is we've been making filings to work through some of the permitting. We will deliver all of those to the city. We were talking with the city manager today, and he was discussing, well, I'm going to need to bring in a consultant very quickly if you're going to give me SwiftMed and all these other things that, you're getting done by other agencies of the city. So also included in this is our obligation to fund your third-party review of the overall project. So if you can go to the next slide. So how do you allocate, what's happening under this development agreement? We're privately funding all the infrastructure work as we talked about. There'll be $10 million available to the city the first half of that within 90 days of when we break ground horizontal, not when we start a building, but we pull a permit, we actually put a shovel in the ground, city sends us a bill, we will send $5 million to the city. We're going to, the $300,000 for, it's now called additional water support because the city manager doesn't want to tie just to the cooperative. That's available the day after the development agreement is signed and through its appeal period. You can ask for funding for that immediately. We're going to take care of all the public roadway improvements and then, the regulatory transparency. Everybody wants to see all of our filings. We're going to be obligated under this agreement to make those readily available within a couple days after we file. So all those filings will keep coming to the city. In terms of how we're trying to allocate risk, so we do what we do well and we try to let the city do its share. The city is not going to have to expand the infrastructure. As I said, we're doing that at our cost. The city is not taking on any financial exposure. The city has no financial obligations under this agreement because I know we're all focused on tax credits and it sounds like a scary thing, but when you go through it at its core, when we pay taxes for buildings that are completed, that's when we get our money back. So the city's actually got the money before we will ever get any of that money back. So it's structured so the city is never at financial risk for doing that. And the city will also know the amount of the taxes it's getting. So it can plan for what it does with its 60%, and it will know how long it will take to pay the 40% back. And then we looked at the capacity. And that's why the number dropped of water. That's why the number dropped. The city wanted to have remaining capacity. God bless you. The city wanted to have remaining capacity to allow additional development to occur before the project happens. And then the city will choose how it wants to look at its future water capacity. It will have funding from us if it chooses to do that. That's not we're not at the table as part of that conversation. Next slide, please. So just so we're completely clear, this is the list that we negotiated with the city. It was probably the least negotiated part of our agreement. We felt it was what the city's list should be, but we felt we wanted to have an idea. We wanted to know that this early money was going to go to projects that were advancing current needs. Quite frankly, that would also be helpful to our project. And so when you look at it, I mean, the fire station construction is obviously an important project. So the library improvements, we're fine. They want to upgrade systems. They want to look at, actually taking on more water. The city manager tells me we're going to be bringing the vertipads in, and we're not going to need trucks to bring them in, but it's one of the things the city's looking at, does a vertipad work? And then, one of the things I think it's most important, but not our business, strategic planning. There's a lot for the city to think about with the kind of revenue associated with this project. So how it thinks about planning ahead, and this gives you a couple of years head start before those revenues come in. We'll get the 10 sooner, but when the revenues come in from the building. So how the city wants to plan, how the city wants to manage itself, obviously is an important way to make that money available. So that's the end of our formal presentation. Happy to answer any questions that they're technical. I'm going to ask Elise to come up if they're business-wise or otherwise. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we appreciate your time. We know this is an important issue to the city. We're very excited about what we think this can do. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody got questions, Mr. Burkhart? Well, we're going to go with the board members first, and then we'll get to the public. I think you addressed it, but both of you all addressed it very well. And I appreciate that type of information, the thoroughness. You covered a lot of points and concerns that I had. So, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, would you mind if we submitted a copy of the presentation into the record just so that it's available for City Council when they?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I just had a quick question, and it's just it's nothing to do with.
Excuse me, you may come up too. You may want to answer. You both can be up here.
Sure,
Okay?
I'll be pointing over here probably a lot.
Very well. Save us some time.
Exactly.
No, and if this were to come in, do you guys historically in the communities that you're in, are you involved in that community? From a school system, athletics, just whatever those types of things are. Are you going to be a part of the community, or are you just strictly business?
We're a business, but what we do and what we're planning to do is there's different types of community engagements. We as a firm typically do that community engagement starting when our final approvals have been granted and the project is moving forward. So our first step after the development agreement is we're going to actually engage on the ground. We're going to set up an office. We'll be talking to people because what it really wants to lead to is the opportunities. So there's going to be 3,000 to 4,000 people building this project every year. So then there's going to be about on the grounds itself about 4 to 500 permanent jobs plus other servicers coming in. The goal is you want to train people, meet people where they are at whatever level they are. So one of the biggest programs we'll do is there'll be a training program. And whether we're going to be working with the high school, we've already had conversations, Polk, people like that. We're going to create these opportunities because it's a good thing to do, but it's also a realistic thing to do to make sure we can develop this project in a way. So I think you'll see us a lot around town, but our approach has typically been let's get it approved, let's get everything set up, then we'll come in and we'll set up. We're going to have several Stonebridge people in town, and we're going to have other people helping us reach out to the community because it's an important part of us to be part of the fabric.
I have a question. You had touched on doing a traffic mitigation study. How long is the period of construction? How many years are we going to have constant construction traffic in and out?
It's going to take about 6 years, and that's why the plan is set up so that people won't be driving through the city. And it was in the town in the pub forum we showed We'll bring people around from the east and down from the north, and they'll come in before the city up north. Okay, and if you want to see it, we can pull it up. But then also everybody coming from the west will come up Broadway. And I mentioned earlier, the real difference is today we have a way to really enforce it. To be honest, when we were checking truck traffic on a project in Washington 15 years ago, it was hard, right? They go the first 2 blocks the way they're supposed to be, and all of a sudden traffic was bad and they'd go this way. Well, now with cameras and things of that nature, we're going to be able to track everybody. And if they go, they'll be fined, and the fines will escalate to the point when then, that particular subcontractor will not be allowed to work on the project.
Also with the traffic, construction is at 24/7.
Now, we'll be working within the city's hours. I think any nighttime work would require special permits.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, I believe we will.
No, I was going to ask, are you doing any additional, because there was a lot of noise, a lot of uproar in regards to the noise.
Yeah.
Will you be doing any additional mitigating factors to isolate the noise in that particular area?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how we ensure we get down to 50 decibels, there's various techniques. It starts with what equipment you buy, how you shield the equipment. So and the technology is getting better and better. But we'll continue, and over 8 buildings, we'll be using different technology over 8 buildings. So we will be, I'm sure one of the city's third-party consultants will be a sound consultant who's going to review our equipment and make sure that the science proves where we're going to be, and then it's also going to be enforced. I mean, I'm quite sure people will be out there with meters making sure we're complying at the property line, and we're fine being held to that standard.
And then I have one additional question. Sure. Of the 1,300 acres, how many acres approximately will the data center cover for folks to have a clear understanding?
Right now, I believe the impacted area in that circle, which is the main development area, is roughly 200 or so acres.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chris, did I get that right?
4.4 million square feet.
No, but he was asking how many acres we would be disturbing for the buildings and the immediate activities around the buildings. I think that was the question.
For public record, I know a main concern throughout the city is the water pollution that the data center could cause. Is there anything to protect that, or any studies that you will do to make sure that things are not going back into our water system?
Yeah, so the only thing we'll be discharging in the wastewater system here is what's going through our potable water. So with a closed loop system, there effectively is no discharge. And to the extent, if it has to be serviced, there are lots of rules that we'll be following to make sure the discharge is handled the right way. If we can't meet the standards for discharge into the city's system, then we'll basically truck it out. And when some of these buildings, when we fill, we'll probably have to honestly truck it in to be able to make sure the capacities are available at the times we'll need those capacities.
And if I could add to that too, with the effluent that's coming out of their facility, we're looking to be able to test the quality of that effluent as it comes out of the facility and be able to say whether or not it meets within the range of tolerance for our facility, which is something that we don't do across the board on most commercial or industrial developments as it stands now.
Are there any impacts to air quality?
So the biggest impact to air quality is clearly from the generators. That's what creates pollution, and that's why it's so highly regulated. The generators will run in a typical year 40 hours. Because what you're doing is you're testing them, and that's 10 to 15 to 20 hours a year. Then the amount of actual downtime where the generators are running to support the facility is actually low, because one of the reasons we're we hope to have the first big data center in Florida here, is the reliability of the system. Two reasons to locate the data center next to the Heinz Energy Complex. One is it's a very compatible neighbor in terms of use. Two, we actually won't get, as they call them, the electrons from that. You get it from what's called the grid. You get it from the entire area. What we have, though, is one of the best infrastructures in the state of Florida around that Heinz Energy Complex. Their downtime from that complex over the last 6 or 7 years is about 4 hours, and it was from lightning strikes. So, our expectation of the generators running here is extraordinarily low. As I said, we're not allowed to run them more than 100 hours a year by permit. It's a highly regulated aspect. The reason you need them is because all of us want to watch our Netflix, or the hospital may want to access their records, or we may want to get ChatGPT or whichever one you want to answer our questions. The reliability, they usually call it 5 nines. So to have 5 nines of reliability, you literally have to have 100% backup emergency generator power for the buildings. So that's why it's there, and that's the hours. So when you run it that low, the science says it's not damaging. It's an emotional issue, but that's what the science says.
And then the cooling systems and stuff, so there's like steam or is there?
That's the closed loop.
Okay.
It's not it's not an evaporative cooling system. We don't have cooling towers and things like that. So that's the difference in the world. When you hear about huge water issues at data centers, and there is one in particular that loves to do what's called fully evaporative water, they will use millions of gallons of water a day because 60-80% of the water that goes in evaporates. So it has to be constantly replaced. Our designs are in these closed loop systems so that we don't have to be calling for water constantly to run the facility, just as I said, potable water for the kitchens and the bathrooms and that nature.
When the generator's running, what's the decibel noise?
When they're running, it'll run at about 80 to 90 decibels, and at the property line, it'll get down to 55. So even when our generators are running, we're going to hit the level. Our obligation is, at worst case, to hit the decibel levels required at the property line. And your code's actually you actually have one of the harder sound codes. I didn't read it, someone did. So it's whatever we're doing at whatever its worst moment, that's what we have to plan for, to make sure that we're not, whether it's 1 hour or whatever, we're at the property line and we're not causing any issues.
Thank you.
I have another question.
You look like you had one more.
Duration and termination of the agreement that we're discussing tonight is 20 years. So what does that look like for the city at the end of 20 years? We're going to have a massive data center there, and is there decommissioning of that, or is it continually what we all do, because our agreement will end?
So what our agreement is about, and I'll let Elise step in, our agreement is about, can you go back a slide or two?
Wait for it.
One more. So what the agreement is about you all reserving water capacity, our ability to get the $10 million back, and then a list of things we're providing. In terms of how we operate the building, our obligations are in perpetuity in terms of meeting what the city's requirements are for operating a building. So we need to meet life safety, we need to meet all the other elements of code. How to do?
Life safety, OSHA, state, and all of the state and the federal, the local regulations, those continue as long as that is operating forever.
So the 20 years is just in terms of, if we haven't, what the real fundamental is, if we haven't used 50,000 gallons and built our buildings, you get that capacity back at the end of 20 years. That's really what the 20 years means. And in terms of us, our funding is going to be done well in advance of 20 years.
And remember, if this if we haven't built the building in 20 years, you still have $10 million that doesn't have to get paid back in any way, shape, or form because the building will not be built and there's no other repayment obligation other than ad valorem tax abatement at 40%. So there's a vacant piece of property, the agreement would terminate, and you would keep the $10 million and not have to repay that. We want to build the data center, so, but if
If we start and don't finish, you're not.
Aren't you selling it?
I don't know if you want me to start.
No, not yet. Okay, we're gonna get to that shortly.
Any other questions? Thank y'all for your time. We appreciate it.
thank you.
Well, I do have one other question in here. And I do want to mention, and that may have come up in what was said in the audience, it's about the assignment and successors. I guess that was to protect us under Florida statutes and such.
Well, it's both. The way our business works
Okay,
is we're gonna build these buildings. We'll have lenders. To be able to get financing, a lender needs the ability to step in under these agreements. We have a track record of owning things a long time. There's probably a pretty good chance at some point we would sell the building. We might sell it to the occupant, we might sell it to somebody else. So the assignability is important, so that way we can assign it to the new owner, and you would then have the relationship directly with the people who would own the property. It's a pretty typical just a typical way the real estate business works and the way these agreements have to protect all the different parties.
did we, was that a joint effort to protect us from the foreign countries of concern issue?
Yes, your new city attorney
Okay.
put a whole lot of
I
stuff
think
in
it's
here.
significant.
Yeah, no, because I was asked the question.
Yes.
We have to comply with law, whether it's in the agreement or not. There's no holiday because it wasn't in a development agreement. The city attorney and the city manager felt there were a lot of things that, based on issues that were raised, that they wanted to be explicit in the agreement. But I'll look at the two attorneys. No, but also, so we can't do that. But there may be one or two things in the law that we didn't put in this development agreement. We don't get just because it isn't said, doesn't mean we get a hall pass on what the law is. And that's honestly the fine line for the attorneys, which is how much to put in the agreement so everybody's comfortable and satisfied, and not just rewrite the entire code and put in the agreement.
And the city attorney may want to speak to this, but there are some prohibitions against local governments, knowing who they're getting into business with. And so the city attorney specifically wanted to put information into that agreement to protect the city, to make sure that it was explicit that certain types of companies and individuals were being appropriately screened and could not be successors in interest to this particular agreement.
Yeah, that is accurate. So the Florida statutes provide several obligations specifically for local government contracts. That are these prohibitions on scrutinized companies, foreign countries of concerns, etc. So we wanted to make sure that those were incorporated, which it would be something that certainly the developer has to comply with and are a bit above and beyond what you would see in a typical real estate deal in the private sector.
Correct. Okay.
There is something that I did want to add, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So I talked a little bit about monitoring what comes back, and I wanted to add to that. What I'm excited about is the opportunity to build something new. In my wastewater and water experience, I'm dealing with existing communities and existing facilities, and so the opportunity to have them build something to our specification gives me the opportunity to address some of the concerns, like the forever chemicals. We create water, we send it to them, they use it, they send it back to us. And there's a concern, and what comes back to us might be something that contaminates, quote unquote, our system. but we have the opportunity to have them build to our specifications the facilities that come back to us. And so that gives me the opportunity to say, to build a system that monitors what comes back to us. And if there's an issue with what comes back to us, then we have the opportunity then to say, hey, you need to change your operations in such a way that what comes back to us meets our standards. And that's something, like I mentioned briefly, we don't do elsewhere because we don't have the facilities, frankly. But it makes so much sense to be able to do that in today's world, to take a look at not only what you send them, but what comes back and what is the quality of what comes back. And we have the potential with this new development to be able to look at what comes back and monitor that and manage that accordingly.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we're going to open the part of the public hearing where we have the public come forward. And do we have an order of names that we're going to call out?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's call the first name up, and remember, give us your name and address for the record. And you got 3 minutes.
Teresa Keene.
Okay, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa Keene, 809 Edgewood Drive.
Can you get as close to the microphones? But there you go. Thank you, Teresa.
809 Edgewood Drive, Fort Meade. It sounds like everybody is doing their due diligence to know what this is coming to. It is a huge project. My concerns are how many people are actually going to be physically working at the data center. You know, after all this is said and done and all the contractors are gone, how is it going to benefit Fort Meade? Because I probably won't be here in 10 years. The community needs to have industry and business that are beneficial to the city. Not that they come for a construction and then they're gone and then a lawyer comes and takes care of little issues and stuff. How is this data center going to be beneficial for the city and future generations?
Well, that speaks directly to the development agreement, but I think the benefits are really going to be the economic benefits. I don't know about the professional and technical people that will be working in a data center. I really don't, but I'm sure there's going to be some employment to Fort Meade. But the benefits, to me, again, will be the economic benefits to Fort Meade.
Christina Richard.
Hello, Christina Reichert. I'm a senior attorney with Earth Justice. I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Confederation of Southwest Florida, whose members are residents of this community. I submitted a letter last week to the board, and I had asked if that would be placed in the record and wanted confirmation if that had been done, along with the attachments to the letter.
You would need to enter that into the record tonight at the public hearing.
Okay, I have a paper copy of the letter, but the attachments are not printed. So would I be able to resend the share file to you all with that material? I did get a response from Nicole that it had been received.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of it.
Okay, I think I emailed everybody who was on the board according to the Fort Meade website. So I want to start by just flagging that the development agreement seems to be a bit premature because it does talk about some of the needs that this data center will have. But I think there's a question of feasibility of this design. I heard it stated that the closed loop system has no discharge, which is not accurate according to my understanding of how closed loop systems work. There's also a recent example of an AI developer. This is what they do for a living. And they built a large data center, relied on closed loop cooling, and still needed 8 million gallons a day to cool the facility. And so I do have questions on whether the design as it's been presented is actually feasible, and whether or not this developer is going to have to come back before the board and the city to expand their project as they move forward. There was also mention about the amount of power that would be used and statements that this would be beneficial to Fort Meade and the community. But I want to point out that 1.2 gigawatts, that's twice the size of Tallahassee in terms of energy needs. So think about how many generators would be required to power the entire city of Tallahassee times 2. That's how much we're talking about here. I also want to flag that for any of the Fort Meade residents that do use Duke Power, it's not entirely clear that there wouldn't be rate increases for those residents as well, based on the current tariffs as they're being proposed. And now I want to talk about the money that is being talked about here, the $10 million, and it is a significant sum. But as I identified in the letter, there are significant costs that are going to come to this community and the city if this data center is built, has been seen in every other data center across the country in terms of health impacts, pollution impacts, the sound impacts. There's no mitigation for low frequency sound that exists aside from the technology. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
Lisa Rice.
Before I start, this is what she sent, what she was talking about. Would you like to hand it out? Sure. Sorry, I don't have one for everybody.
You might as well get started, Lisa,
All right.
because that's not part of our agenda item, and
All right, I'm
we're
starting.
not going to go into that.
No,
Let's
it's just for information.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's just focus on the development agreement.
Okay, my name's Lisa Rice, 504 North Pine Avenue, Fort Meade, Florida, 33841. I am speaking with you as a member of the Environmental Confederation of Southwest Florida. And even though some of the things I want to talk to you about is not in the development agreement, I want it to be on record in case there are any judicial rights that I would wish to look for in the future. So the proposed data center, if approved, would ruin the retirement that I dreamed of. Since I have asthma and the additional emissions, which you presented well, but I don't buy it, the emissions is going to be detrimental to my asthma, and I love working in the yard, and that's just going to ruin my older years. I am also a huge nature lover and an amateur photographer. I get excited when I take pictures of some of the birds that migrate, mainly the kites. They fly over us to get to Africa, and that is one of the few wildlife corridors in that area. So they will no longer be able to take a break there to continue. So those of us who love seeing them won't be there anymore. And the noise just won't hurt the wildlife. I am concerned about my sleep. I know the decibel levels are low, but there are radio frequencies that I am concerned about. And also, when we see the news and we show chemical spills, it's like we've always been, oh, it's not us, thank God, we don't have to worry about it. Well, with forever chemicals, we have to worry about it now. I never thought I would have to worry about stuff like that. And our group has researched a lot. I mean, a lot. You see the other communities that were promised, nothing bad against folks. Everybody's been promised something, but you keep hearing them say they promised it, we still can't sleep. We promised it, there's still rolling blackouts. I think there needs to be more research done before the board and the city approves it. And like I said, the rolling blackouts is a big concern. And I don't want to be a guinea pig through this, and I don't want to be a statistic. I love little Fort Meade, just, one horse town. So the Planning and Zoning Board should not recommend that the city sign the development agreement unless Stonebridge has provided specific information regarding the facility's plan to power the hyperscale AI center, including the backup power, as well as specific cooling technologies to be used, including the chemicals that may be present that are federally and that are on the list and not on the federal list. And Stonebridge works with Southwest Florida SwiftMud, I do believe I saw that, thank you. And that's it. It's more about money, peeps. It's more about money. It's more than money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler Hancock.
Good evening, board members. My name is Tyler Hancock, resident of 4631 Bryan Avenue. I'm speaking to you today as a member of the Environmental Confederation of Southwest Florida. I am going to be adversely affected by this large data center. I spend lots of time in our beautiful parks and nature. This data center will severely deplete my ability to enjoy them as much as I do now. This, of course, is due to the low frequency hum created by similar facilities that will take away from my experience in our parks. I also am fearful of the ability for forever chemicals of making their way into our aquifer and diminishing our water quality forever. In addition, these centers have a tendency to devastate water levels in surrounding areas. The small springs that feed into the Peace River have the potential to fade away forever. This Planning and Zoning Board should not recommend the city sign the development agreement unless and until it works with the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council to identify the necessary conditions to protect the residents and our environment. Those conditions should be one, that Stonebridge use a closed-loop cooling system that does not use any chemicals that are currently unregulated by the US EPA or the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Let me breathe. 2, requiring that Stonebridge's evaporative cooling system relies solely on treated wastewater. 3, prohibiting Stonebridge from using any potable water, either from local facilities or groundwater, in its evaporative cooling systems. Number 4, require Stonebridge test the treated wastewater to be used in the evaporative system prior to employing it to ensure that all present contaminants are regulated by the US EPA and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and are capable of being removed before any discharge to facilities or the environment. Number 5, require Stonebridge to conduct a study demonstrating how much water will be required daily in its evaporative cooling water system, requiring that any discharge from the cooling systems be treated at a wastewater treatment facility so that any discharge complies with state and federal standards. Lastly, prohibiting Stonebridge from relying on deep well injection to hold its cooling system discharges. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Amanda Sparks.
Hey guys, my name is Amanda Sparks, 311 Northeast 5th Street, Fort Meade. I come as a mom and as a resident here. Most of you know my son's medically ill. I'm sure I'm not the only family that has a child like that or a family member or cancer. I've done a lot of research and I have family in other states. Georgia, Virginia, Nevada, Texas, Oregon. I ask you guys to contact these places. Washington, Wisconsin. Their cities were targeted like this small town. They have nothing to show with it. We're promised employment. They have 20, maybe 30 people that are employed now after the construction. The construction, yeah, probably 500 to 1,000 people in and out over those 5 years or whatever they're claiming. But that's not true for the employment. My main issue is they're talking about the water and how it's a closed loop. Well, the closed loop has to have a blow off. With that blow off comes the chemicals that keep that water clean. So it's going into our ground, whether they say it is or it isn't. It's going everywhere. I'm for Fort Meade growing, but this is not the correct way. And my grandpa used to tell me a man's word is the best thing. And right now we look like little cats or mouse running after money because we need it. And that's the way I see it. I'm for Fort Meade growing, and I want people to know that. I think we should grow, but this is not the way to grow. It is ultimately going to cost us in the long run. And the attorney said it. Eventually, it's going to come back to us being responsible for it. But where does that responsibility come in the lie from? Then there was the $10 million. When we get $5 million, I think she said, after breaking ground or something, and then it grows. But what if we don't get revenue? What if it doesn't do anything? What if it causes more harm in Fort Meade? Most of you have elderly. Most of you have children. What is the longevity of this? To me, my longevity is not being able to have my son out and do things. I'm asking you guys to look at these other towns, these other states that have lawsuits against these companies because of the things, the deaths, the cancers, the baby formalities, all of this. Arcadia is fighting them. Lithia is fighting them. Midland up in North Florida, they're all fighting them. And I'm just asking that you guys do more research than what to accept this money. I know we need the money, but this isn't the way to do it.
William and Janice Baker.
They left.
Okay. Jesse Maxwell. Okay. T.W. Grant.
You good? Getting there. My name's Tim Grant. I live at 901 First Street Northeast here in Fort Meade. Talk about water consumption. Massive water consumption is the one key features of existing hyperscale A1 data centers. Large data centers like this one proposed here can consume up to 5 million gallons of water per day, equivalent to the water of a town populated by 10,000 to 50,000 people. Although PBA Holdings said that it hopes to employ closed-loop cooling system to reduce consumption, that does not necessarily mean it will need to consume copious quantities of water. Indeed, in a recent scientific study explained in hotter climates, closed-loop water systems use up to 8 million gallons per day at their peak. For example, a leading technology company's state-of-the-art data center under construction to host AI and core products employs a closed-loop liquid-cooled system that recirculates the same water, but still needs up to 8 million gallons per day on the hottest days of the year. Talk about water pollution. When wastewater or gray water used for evaporated cooling contains pollutants like nitrates, that pollution becomes concentrated as fresh water evaporates. Indeed, in Oregon, investigative reporters uncovered that more than 97% of wells tested in the vicinity of a hyperscale A1 data center contained water that violated safety standards for nitrate pollution. Residents filed a class action lawsuit against Amazon and 16 other defendants. Amazon now agreed to pay $20.5 million in a settlement in exchange for no admission to guilt. Closed-loop systems rely on a cocktail of additives such as corrosion inhibitors, biocides, and antifreeze blends to make sure water can flow through a closed-loop system repeatedly. This cocktail can also include forever chemicals, or FPAs, which can cause altered immune and thyroid function, liver disease, lipid and insulin dysregulation, kidney disease, adverse reproductive and development outcomes, and cancer. Going to fire safety, hyperscale A1 data centers rely on various types of batteries, including lead-acid batteries, lithium-ion batteries, and nickel-cadmium batteries. If a fire at this facility could create an environmental disaster, spreading toxic chemicals from lithium-ion batteries such as hydrogen fluoride, as well as particulate matter, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, and volatile organic compounds. All of the facts can be found in the paperwork that you received today. They've all been researched. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather Grant.
Good evening. My name's Heather Grant, 901 First Street Northeast, and I'm here as a member of EcoSwift and Watchdogs of Fort Meade. This data center is inconsistent with the city's local land use regulations. Section 7.0404 Fort Meade's Unified Land Development Code states that no proposed use or zoning district development standards shall be approved for a particular location unless consistent with the future land use map of comprehensive plan of the city. The ULDC requires that all uses be constructed, maintained, and operate so as not to be injurious, offensive to the occupants of adjacent premises by reason of emission, creation of noise, vibration, including during construction of 5 years, smoke, dust, or other particulate matter, toxic or noxious waste materials, odors, fire, and explosive hazard or glare. We're a small community that relies on recreation and tourism as part of our economy. We have a lot of great environmental tourist things, and we're not going to get any more if we have this, and we could lose the ones we have. The rendezvous is closer than we are even, and I doubt that if they'll be able to stick around once this happens. Moreover, I was here a couple months ago when they had the meeting with the water co-op, and capping that 300,000 that's great, but I saw, and somewhere in here have pictures, it's not a $300,000 increase. They were projecting out as water gets more scarce, and it's a finite amount that we'll be sharing with the other co-op members. It gets up to the $1.7, $2.5 million a year levels. We really need to research that because we could be being very shortchanged on $300,000. And that's what, and I don't want to see our water bills triple like they have in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Riley Grant.
Okay. Hi, my name is Riley Grant. I also live at 901 First Street Northeast, Fort Meade, Florida, 33841. Data centers rely heavily on different battery technologies, which also happen to be one of the most significant hazardous waste streams in a facility. Researchers predict a 1,000-fold increase in hazardous electronic waste from hyperscale AI data centers like the one proposed. This hazardous electronic waste includes chemicals such as sulfuric acid, lead, cadmium, refrigerants, and mercury. A recent study has also shown that data centers are creating heat islands, warming the land around them by up to 16 degrees Fahrenheit. And this effect is not limited to the immediate proximity of their locations. The heat increases reach up to 12 kilometers or 6.2 miles from the facility, which certainly reaches well in Fort Meade. As the researchers explain, this data heat island effect could impact the welfare, healthcare, energy, and demographic systems. On top of that, the developer's own study identified potential impacts to threatened and endangered species, including sandhill cranes, wood storks, Florida burrowing owl, the tricolored bat, gopher tortoises, and eastern indigo snakes, which are all very protected in this state. Moreover, because listed species likely rely on the nearby environment, all the effects identified earlier could impact these species as they will impact the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
George McNerney.
Hello, my name is George McNerney, city resident. Address is confidential, member of EcoSwift, and vice chair of Watchdogs of Fort Meade. I am speaking with the board tonight as a concerned resident and advocate for responsible development. I have over a decade of experience working in risk management, including service in the fire department with Hillsborough and Polk counties. I am concerned about the community and my own health and safety if there is a fire at the AI data center. Our current building and fire codes are not updated to support anything with this complexity at this time. The AI data center boom is happening faster than safety rules, emergency planning, local oversight can keep up with. These facilities use high amounts of electricity, batteries, cooling systems, and backup power, creating unique risks for the fire departments and communities. Experts warn that many local governments are being pressured to approve projects quickly enough through the current codes may not fully address the hazards. In Fort Meade, the heat index during the summer frequently exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Due to the high temperatures combined with high humidity, Fort Meade has a severe high risk to fire risk. Currently, the fire risk in this area are currently the highest in the U.S. at 97%. Last February, 1,220 acres burned just north of this area, where the Fort Meade Fire Department had to ask for mutual aid to help extinguish that fire. According to the University of Cambridge study, the data heat island effect temperatures increased over wider regions around the data centers. The average land reported 16.38 degrees and 6.2 mile impact radius. For context, the heat effect alters the average high in August from 92 to 105. A very thorough article from the NFPA places emphasis on the risk related to these types of builds in rural areas. Experts urge communities to ask hard questions, slow down the approvals, and make sure safety comes before any corporate speed and profit. The Planning and Zoning Board should not recommend the city sign a development agreement unless and until it works with the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council to identify necessary conditions to protect the residents of Fort Meade as well as their environment. Ensuring that the Fort Meade and Stonebridge have developed comprehensive systems, facilities, resources to manage potential fires and hyperscale AI data centers at their locations, as well as ensuring the liability falls on the facility for any disasters that occur. And please keep in mind, as we've heard tonight, we are trying to build infrastructure to keep up with what they're trying to offer the city right now. We need to have that infrastructure already in place before they come to the city. Thank you. Here's for the record.
Tina Barnett.
Hello, I'm Tina Barnett. I reside at 2711 US Highway 98 East, Fort Meade. I have been a resident of Fort Meade for 55 of my almost 69 years, and I am here to request that the zoning board not approve this development agreement at this time with Stonebridge. My concern is that I feel that this has been presented hastily. On January 29th, Mr. Furstenberg had a town hall meeting where he offered us all kinds of information. I did request about their experience in building AI centers, since there was nothing on their website, which he referred me to. He told me to reach out to the Fort Meade Data Center response. Is copy what you receive or copy of my questions. I wanted to know where these data centers that they have successfully built were, so I could make a personal visit. I feel like our commissioners need to make a visit to see these sites, to be in these communities. But at my expense, I wanted to go. Travel, Virginia, Arizona, wherever I've got to go. As you can look and see, I took several weeks to get a response. And I'm shaking to death. But they said, this is confidential. As you look on the next to last page, page 7, I am told, and I'll read it quickly because I'm running out of time. Is it page 6? Thank you, Megan. My hands are shaking. Anyway, they're saying they can't tell me where they are. There's 30 they've developed, 5 more they're developing. But due to confidentiality, we're not allowed to know where they are, and we can't visit them, and we can't find out about them. So we're rushing. We don't know anything about them. They built fine office buildings and been in business for years. Thank you.
Raul Alfonso.
Hello, my name is Raul Alfonso, 313 South Orange Avenue. I'm first a concerned resident of Fort Meade, the chair of the newly formed Watchdogs of Fort Meade, and finally a member of EcoSwift. While I understand the desire for economic development, this 4.4 million square foot hyperscale data center in our city limits raises serious risk to our small community. The agreement contains too many open-ended provisions that leave critical protections vague or discretionary. You have the reserve of only 50,000 gallons of water a day in sewer capacity, yet it relies heavily on future good faith efforts, addendums, into the developer's own plans for infrastructure. There's no strong enforceable caps on actual water use, no binding noise limits for cooling systems or backup generators, no detailed requirements for air quality monitoring or emergency power emissions. The power demand will reach over a gigawatt, which is enough electricity for hundreds of thousands of homes, but the agreement barely addresses the grid strain or future power plants to build to supply this facility beyond the general statements. Many key details, exact mitigation measures, independent studies, performance guarantees are deferred to later permitting or left to reasonable city discretion. Exactly how much more reasonable will this city be forced to be after collecting and spending the $10 million prepayment that's going to be hung over our heads is to be said. But our town already faces drought concerns and limited utility capacity. We can't afford the vague promises when the project could permanently alter our water supply, raise noise levels, both audible and infrasound that you feel for miles and miles, all the way across town. I'm on South Orange. I respectfully urge the board to recommend denial of this development agreement in its current form, or at a minimum, to delay and require amendments that add things like binding water and noise caps with real-time monitoring. This is a 24-hour-a-day facility. This isn't like Belmont up there that works during the day and shuts down and we can open our windows at night and have a nice quiet evening. We need mandatory independent environmental and utility impact studies that can be made publicly available on the website, the city website, well before another vote on this facility to be made. We need clear penalties for stronger performance bonds for compliance with penalties high enough that they won't simply just pull it from petty cash and pay the fines.
That's 3 minutes.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Martin.
Good evening. Thank you for having this meeting. My name is Ron Martin. I live at 825 South Houston. I want to talk about something that nobody wants to talk about, and that's the Community Affairs of Polk County has a map showing this area that they're going to build this data center is high in rayon gases. The phosphate mining that was on this property emits low-level radiation, contamination, exposure of rayon gases in confined spaces. Has there been a geotechnical testing of the property for rayon gases that will build up in these buildings that would be confined in those buildings? There's only one health concern working on inside these enclosed buildings, and that's cancer. Mr. Stonebridge, you're the developer. Has there been a geomedical area of this property? Yes, yes.
Yes, we're going, right now we're going through the environmental.
And will your workers that build this inside and will they be aware of what the rayon gases are being emitted from this building, this center?
Ron, you need to direct your questions to the board members.
It's a development. He's a developer, so he should be able to answer the questions.
Well, we've had him up here, and we can address some of these later. But direct your questions to us, and don't before you run out of time.
Okay.
And we'll try to make sure that the things get addressed properly.
Now, I would recommend that this development agreement stop and not be in such a rush to go forward. This is a very important issue here. We've had cancer rate skyrocket in this community, and I think that this is a legit question that the Planning and Zoning Board should be able to answer and get answers before you can go forward. I would recommend a no vote on this development. Thank you very much.
Roxanne Reyes.
Good evening. My name is Roxanne Reyes. I live in Winter Haven. And I don't know a lot about this issue. I just found out about it on Real America's Voice this week, a few days ago. And having come here tonight, I realize this is an issue about Fort Meade, but I didn't hear one comment about the other local communities around here that will be affected. I used to live in Greenleaf. I had Duke Energy. Do I want my energy bills to go up because you got for something that I don't benefit from? Well, the answer is no. A lot of people have no idea what's going on here. But I like what this gentleman asked the developer, and it sounds like it's pending. Any studies that are not finished yet, any studies that are not independent, whether it's the environment or the utility issues, if you don't have all the answers, and by the way, everything sounds so nice right now. Oh, you're going to get this benefit, you're going to get that benefit. Well, things happen. Utility costs go up. Water costs go up. They're giving you the best scenario for the expenses. And I believe that this project could very well have an impact, a negative impact, of course, on the environment, but also the surrounding communities here. I don't even know if anybody bothered to check with them to see how this impact is going to affect them. Has anybody researched that? Because Fort Meade will get the benefit, but I believe that there's a significant part of Central Florida that will get the impact. And that is very important. You have to, this isn't just about a project that you need to do. I know your infrastructure needs some work. I know your planning manager, your city manager would love to have a bullet item on his resume for a big project like this. But after all the dust is settled, the developer's gone, the lawyers are gone, the city council changes, and the taxpayers are still here, living with the repercussions. So you have a lot of research that you need to do. And don't believe all the hype, because if Fort Meade sells out to big development, it's going to impact Fort Meade, but it's going to impact the rest of us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Sorrells.
Hi. Oh, and thank you for that thank you card from Tampa. That's where you live?
No? Anyway, I'm at 107 South Henry Avenue, Rebecca Lynn Soros. I'm originally from Miami. I'm not from a small town. I used to call this Fort Miserable. I love it here. I love the people here. I love the community. I think we need to protect our community, our environment. This is a devastating, if you guys clear this, it's going to be devastating, not only for Fort Meade, but for, like she said, the surrounding communities, and even the whole state of Florida. Right now, we're under severe drought. Worst drought in over 20 years in the state of Florida. It's my understanding we're still under that. We've had other companies come in before this company. I'm not going to name names, because there's probably people that still work at that company. But there was an acid leak into the 300-foot acid into the aquifer that wasn't reported because the EPA was decommissioned for a while. It's just who's gonna regulate this? Who's gonna watch them to make sure that they follow through and do what they say they're gonna do? Who's gonna manage what the pollution is? Who's that rely on? And I don't care what anybody says. This is a loan. If you have to pay it back, it's a loan. If I had $10 million right now, I'd give it to you just to get you to stop. I don't. But if I did, I would. I'd give it to you right out of my pocket because I love this town, this community, and these people deserve to have a safe environment and home to live in. Not to mention the generators. We're in Florida. We have hurricanes all the time. Now we're getting, what'd they say, a category 5 category 5 that didn't hit Florida. What if they did? How long would it take us to get their generators? How long would they be without power from Duke? Not only that, God, there's just so many things wrong with this. There's just so many things. I have to say that I don't understand why this is so important to the community. Does anybody know anybody that's qualified to work in a data center? He said training. How long is their training? How many people are we gonna? What's the number on what they're gonna give us for jobs? It's just, like I said, it's a terrible decision to make. Please, please consult your brains, your hearts, your minds. Make the right choice for the people in this community because we rely on you. This is my future. I'm not going anywhere. And the property values, once the water is contaminated and gone, who's going to buy our properties? Them? Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Melissa McNerney.
Hello, my name is Melissa McNerney. I'm a member of EcoSwift, current resident of Fort Meade. Address is confidential. My family has traditionally chosen a position of service without recognition. I stand before you all today at the podium because the peace that this town offers me and my family is in jeopardy, and because of this development of its scale and complexity must be thoroughly planned out with citizens' fact-based concerns addressed. I cannot simply sit this one out. In fact, in face of multifaceted impacts, I landed upon one near and dear to me as it pertains to the sensory load sound complaint on my autistic son. I am concerned about how the sound will impact sleep, cognition, and the way of life of that of my children, loved ones, and the community as a whole. Data centers can create serious and persistent noise pollution for nearby neighborhoods. Unlike occasional loud sounds, the issue is often constant, 24/7 industrial hum caused by cooling systems, air chillers, fans, diesel generators, and sometimes on-site gas turbines. The persistent low-frequency hum can be heard up to 2.5 to 3 miles away, especially in quiet residential areas at night. Because modern AI and hyperscale data centers pack more servers into small spaces, they are becoming louder and more energy intensive, requiring even larger cooling and backup power systems. Noise levels from this sound equipment can reach 90 to 105 decibels. Migraines, elevated blood pressure, vertigo, nausea, and reduced quality of life, especially in children, the elderly, shift workers, and people with health issues. A major problem is that existing local noise ordinance are often not designed to address data centers. Many rules were written for things like parties, music, short disturbances, not large industrial facilities operating around the clock. In addition, low frequency noise, which is common with data centers, can be difficult to measure accurately with standard decibel meters. As a result, many residents file complaints, but little get relief, leading to frustration and in some cases declining property values. The Planning and Zoning Board should not recommend that the city sign a development agreement unless and until it works with the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council to identify the necessary conditions to protect the residents of Fort Meade as well as their environment. Such conditions include at least the following: requiring Stonebridge to conduct a sound study that accounts for both decibel level sound impacts as well as low frequency sounds, requiring Stonebridge to consult with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and in U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding impacts of this hyperscale data center for threatened and endangered species, requiring Stonebridge to conduct a study on the increased air pollution that will occur both at, okay. And I'm gonna thank you for your time. I have something for the record I'd like to submit. Who is taking those documentations? Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you all for your comments. Staff, you got anything to reply to? Do we need to make any reply on anything you heard there? Anybody want to discuss or make a reply to anything that came up?
I don't believe. I'm not sure if Mr. Bell has anything. I do not have anything. The applicant is entitled to rebuttal if they would like to speak at this time.
Melissa, okay. Come on.
For the record, Elise Batzel on behalf of the applicant. Just a couple things quickly. As a reminder, a lot of what you heard tonight dealt with things that relate to permitting. Tonight, we are here to talk about the development agreement. Someone specifically said, what promises are being made. The promises that are being made are actually the contractual obligations that you're considering tonight under the development agreement only. So many of the issues and the concerns will be dealt with at permitting by the appropriate authorities. For example, I heard things about, who is protecting us. That would be the EPA, FDEP, the EPC, and all of the governmental agencies that regulate.
Y'all quiet down, please. Let her speak.
Right, that regulate chemicals, all of that. We have to comply with each and every governmental agency, and if we can't satisfy them, this project doesn't move forward. So really for the benefit of the community, I wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I understand that.
Thank you for
I
your time.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're not taking any more people that hadn't signed up from the audience.
No, sir.
That's closed.
That's correct.
Close public hearing on that.
I wasn't made aware that I had to sign up to speak when I asked you for this call.
Yeah, the city has a policy regarding signing in for a public hearing, and you have missed the sign in.
I asked that, and then he went and asked permission. I got cut off.
Let him talk. My God.
Sorry.
No, we're not going to have that. No. So he's okay. We're gonna close the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
The public hearing part of this right now is closed. We're going to now have conversations, and we had a lot of good people that came up and spoke. We heard you. I'm sure most of the concerns were covered. We've listened to you. We appreciate it. But now we're going to move on with our business. And I want to remind the board that we're here tonight, as I stated earlier, to focus on a development agreement. It's not up to us to debate whether or not Fort Meade gets a data center or doesn't get a data center. That is not the subject of our conversation tonight. That is not the agenda item. It's strictly the development agreement. So with that said, I'm open for any more conversation along the lines of the development agreement.
And I don't know if you want to remind them, but it's my understanding, we're recommending, we're not a decision maker. We're only giving recommendation to they don't have to listen to us.
Absolutely, we're charged with, staff recommends the Planning and Zoning Board review the development agreement and transmit either a recommendation of approval or denial of the development agreement to the City Commission, and a public announcement at the next hearing before the City Commission will be April the 14th. Now, either way we recommend, this is not a rule item. This is a recommend item. Our zoning board deals with a lot of things. Take it very serious. We do a good job. I know we do. We got great members. They're committed, just like we're committed tonight here to come in and do our job the best we can and try to see that Fort Meade's getting a fair and equitable development agreement. And the City Commission, once we make a recommendation, they can actually do whatever they want to do. They can accept it or they can go the other way. They're ultimately the authority. All right. I want to stay, with that said, any more conversation among board members on that?
No. I just want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
There were a lot of asks made by the community, and based on what we're looking at here in the development agreement, a lot of those asks were addressed. From a legal standpoint, as far from what I'm seeing, the legal language is there. There's nothing I can say to say no, based on the asks that were made. And granted, they will have to abide by OSHA, EPA, as well as the oversight of the committee, the city. So I'm in favor of recommending it to the commissioners to make their decision, because they addressed a lot of the asks that the community has been asking as far as what benefits do we get as a city.
I agree. I believe that after, I wasn't sure, I had questions, but I believe after listening to everything tonight during the presentations from both parties, I believe that this agreement has been well negotiated by both parties. I think, contracts, the objective of contract is to try to protect each other, and both parties seem to try to do that based on what's been presented tonight. Again, and we are consistent with the land use plan on what we've done. I can assure you of that. I know that's an issue that came up, but that is needs to be addressed. And, we won't have all the answers right now. Just like it was said, we will not have all the answers, but later on, the environmental issues, the swift mud issues, and all that will have to be addressed. And those permitting agencies will have to get involved, but that's at a later date. That is not up to us. So, that said, I'll ask for a motion.
I got a question before we go to that.
Okay.
Just some of the stuff here, I understand the agreement, and I understand that's what we're here to do tonight. So, in my mind, and I want to make sure I'm correct on this, that if this does go forward, which that hadn't been decided, correct? But if it does go forward, this is just an agreement on how we will, what the commitments are here. It's not making in favor of a data center or not in favor.
That's right.
But if the commission moves forward with that, this is just an agreement to get there. There's a lot of good questions and all, and I truly believe that there's going to be other opportunities for those types of questions to be addressed as far as the permitting stuff and whatnot. So, is that correct?
Yeah, so the applicant already has entitlements to development under the IPUD that was previously approved. So the data center is already an allowable use. This development agreement speaks to and regulates the infrastructure issues and is a condition of development permits under the IPUD. So this is a requirement, but it does not alter their entitlements to the data center use under the IPUD, and certainly they'll be required to, as they move forward to building permit, to comply with any other regulatory agencies, as well as the city's zoning code.
And if I may add, three things. One, there was a question about water usage. The agreement caps them at 50,000 gallons per day. So any conversation about millions of gallons is a moot point at this point. There was a question about electrical usage. Senate Bill 484, which passed and was approved, has not been signed, but it passed both houses. If you check line 174 and line 181, it dictates that the load or the cost associated with improvements for large-scale centers, like data centers, will not be borne by the public. So it's borne by the developer, not by the public. So even though we've included that already in this agreement, if it was Duke or any other entity, because of this House bill, Senate bill that passed, that addresses that for the entire state of Florida. So there will not be a transfer of cost for development to your electrical charges as a result of a large scale facility. And then the third thing that I neglected to mention was when we talk about the $10 million, that is the city's money and revenue that we would receive as a result of property taxes. The only question that was negotiated, do we wait till 2029, 2030, 2031 to receive that money? Or do we ask the developer through this development agreement to advance it so that we can begin to use it now as opposed to waiting until 2029 and beyond? So that's the city's money in advance as opposed to waiting later. So those are the three things that I wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
And even if they don't pay the taxes, because that money is advanced. So.
Before we make a motion, I want to make it clear that our role as a planning and zoning board is not whether the item meets the requirements set forth in our city code and zoning regulations. Is it permissible? It's not our role to negotiate and finalize any specific terms or conditions. That is ultimately the city commission, who will have the authority to review it, adjust, and determine any additional conditions and agreements. We are able to recommend, because we have spoken to them and asked questions prior to their April 14th meeting. And after hearing some of you guys talk, I would recommend before the April 14th meeting that a trip is planned for the data center to visit other data centers. Also in paragraph 9, according to your recommendation earlier, or I'm sorry, not paragraph 9, page 9, paragraph G, add the word temporary. And then on page 6, paragraph I, add some type of verbiage in there to protect the people first and not isolate the data center, but put the people first. You know, if there's a water shortage or something, just put it in writing. That would be my only recommendation in regards to the development agreement. But according to the zoning requirements we're held to uphold, I do believe that it meets a criteria to approve this stage in the process. Again, the agreement is in full, will be going before the commission, and that board will decide what policy decision to make.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, yes, please.
So as you made two suggestions to the agreement, and I believe the applicant's attorney already alluded to, we're certainly willing to make those updates to make it very clear that these construction easements are temporary in nature. However, I do not think that the city can contract to treat the developer differently from its other water customers. However, we could add language that states they will be treated the same. So if everyone is under a water restriction, everyone is under a water restriction. Certainly, as long as getting a nod from the applicant. Yeah. So we could certainly include that language.
Okay. All right. Again, I'll entertain a motion.
You kind of made one.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to repeat?
I need to get the
we need
verbiage right.
to add the,
Page 9, paragraph G. Add a word temporary somewhere. And then page 6, and I believe it's paragraph I. That's what I wrote down. Some type of verbiage in there that doesn't holds them to the same requirements as the city, the businesses, the other businesses in town, not to isolate them, but they're under the same other requirements. And then recommending that the commission, if they can, because that is a short notice, visit a similar data center, not just any data center, a similar data center, because this one is different than some other, there's so many out there. So maybe one with a closed loop system, something similar.
And Megan, that's part of the temporary construction, even you want to put a termination, the end of construction, termination date. I don't know. I think it would be important if it's.
At the end of construction.
Yeah.
I was going to say, at least Spatzel, for the record, we could proffer something and work with the city attorney that said upon conveyance or transfer of a bill of sale for we can work on some language. Right.
Where you know, in the title search, it knows it's gone.
Yes,
You know.
and we could commit to record in the public records that notice of termination upon that time so that everybody knows when it ends.
I think that's important for the land.
Yes, sir, we're happy to add that as well.
And those are considered recommendations, not requirements. Correct.
Okay.
all right, well,
I think I have all of this.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend the planning and zoning board to submit the development agreement to the commission for approval with adding language that says temporary easements will be returned back to the city upon completion, and that the developer shall be treated mutually or fairly? Equally, excuse me, as relates to water supply. And is that everything?
I believe that's it.
Oh, and also possibly a visitation by the commissioners to a data center as a recommendation.
very well. Very well. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your participation. And the city commission will take this up later.
Yeah, April 14th.
April 14th at 6 p.m. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? And second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Woo.
Well done.